Hi, everybody. Louise Eddington, Cosmic Owl Astrology. I am your wisdom weaver and cyberpunk priestess or witch priestess to the stars. And I'm here today to tell you a little bit of a story and have a little bit of a rant. There is a bit of some astrology in it. So, watch this space because, as I've said many times, we are moving into a new paradigm. And by the way, I hope you catch my presentation that I did with Marina Orms. It's on collaborated videos. I talked about the Saturn Neptune conjunction that's coming up and how it's the first one in over 6,000 years. But anyway, um, so please like, subscribe, all these things. Check out my series workshop, SCERES, series Reborn. I'm just getting everything up and running for that, but there is an early bird price and a payment plan, and that payment plan will change as we get nearer because I always insist on payment plans being paid before the class starts or the workshop. But anyway, 2-day immersion, and we will look at your charts and more. There's bonuses. But anyway, the story starts with this, really. So this little book, it was $1.25. My dad had bought this book. My dad spent a bit of time in the US. He's no longer with us since 1997. I do know he actually traveled through Utah and actually visited Saltaire, which is on the Great Salt Lake, which is kind of interesting, but I don't know much about that. So he picked this book up, obviously, on one of his trips, and I kind of kept it because I'd always been fascinated with the USA. I've traveled a lot in the USA. Now I've lived here since 18 years in the UK. Well, it'll be 18 years this year. I spent some time in Connecticut in the Northeast in the late 80s too. I've had many vacations in the US, and I even studied American Studies in college, which is literature, film, history, sociology, all the things blended in together with the theme of learning about the USA. So I often find myself here as now an American citizen, knowing more about the USA and its history than most Americans, which I find quite interesting because I could not be more white, right? I was born in the UK. My whole heritage is British, but then, aeons ago, Britain was invaded by the Vikings and so on as well. So there's that whole story there. But I'm whiter than white, but I want to learn, and I spend my time trying to understand all these stories. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this book. I'm just going to say, it says, this compressed narrative of the struggles of successive waves of immigrants, of their inestimable gifts to the development of the nation, and of their repeated triumphs over prejudice and discrimination, glows with colour, with eloquent, sound historical knowledge, and a true comprehension of the requisites of American greatness. President Kennedy expounds the need for an enlargement of our narrow laws. His moving book expresses an ideal defined by Washington in the first years of the Republic, that America should always be a propitious asylum for the unfortunates of other countries. That's Alan Nevins. Well, anyway, we'll move away from the book, but I guess I just wanted to show it because this really is kind of where my real interest in the USA began. And well, he obviously, I didn't read it when he published it because, in fact, I don't see a date here. But anyway, whatever. We all know, President Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, died when I was 3. So that narrative has always been in my brain. So now I want to talk about Bad Bunny and the Super Bowl. So And I am going to share the astrology. So let me just share the astrology on Sunday and relate it to the big pattern of all the things I've been talking about all the time. We can take out that extra point at 7 Aries because that's not relevant. But anyway, so I've talked many times about the time we're in, how, all these planets have been moving together. Mars on Sunday, on the Super Bowl day, was still under the beams of the sun. Venus was still under the beams of the sun, and Mercury has just moved out of the beams of the sun and come back online. So Mercury, the messenger, was back online for the Super Bowl. But one particular big aspect was happening on Super Bowl Sunday. Earlier in the day, at 7:43 a.m. Eastern, which would have been 4:43 a.m. on the West Coast, where the Super Bowl was, but still very active. Venus squared Uranus, and Uranus had just stationed direct on February the 3rd and has only moved 1 minute. And these two are in mutual reception. And this is big kind of revolutionary, awakening, kind of aha moments and so on. And here we had Bad Bunny burst onto the Super Bowl stage at halftime after most white Americans had not heard of him. Now, full disclosure, I'd heard of Bad Bunny. I knew he was big. I had not really listened to his music. Everybody knows I love music. And, but I made a real effort to listen to his music before the halftime performance. But what I'm really interested in as well is history, colonialism, the United States history, to go back to this book. I've I listened to Tad Sturmer, who talks about, how the founding fathers set the Constitution up to suit white slave owners. I've looked into the history of slavery and immigration and all those things as much as I can. I can only learn so much I'm one person. But this Venus-Uranus square in each other's signs with Aquarius, and this is in fixed signs, so this is waking people up. Let me talk to you about some things about Bad Bunny's show. Because, and yes, this is in response to a white person who said some very strange things on my on a post of mine because she's white. And anyway, I'm going to call it like it is. So one thing she said is because he sang in Spanish. Most people are like, oh, he sang in Spanish. Even some people I love are going, oh my God, he sang in Spanish. It's nice if one song would have been in English. Well, Lady Gaga sang in English, but besides the point. So this person said, we pick up our phones and make a call to a business customer service and they get someone speaking broken English. Language is a big barrier to the ones we are trying to leave Trump. Anyway, we have to meet in the middle. But to me, what that's saying is it should have been English to reach MAGA. Well, I said, I agree. We should learn Spanish and have dual immersion schools from preschool and not impose what's acceptable onto Latinos who are more closely related to the original inhabitants of this land. Although then there's the whole history of Spanish colonization as well. So, it's a melting pot, right? Then the comment was, he made it about culture in America, which caused a bigger dividing line in America. What? I'm sorry. Have we not dealt with other cultures assimilating into the United States for decades, for centuries? Slaves were first brought to the US to the what is now the US anyway, before the United States began as a country. And then that's, not even mentioning the indigenous people of this land who are more closely related to South American, Latin American countries. Why are they even called Latin American, really? Latin is from Rome, but anyway, that's a whole other thing, right? So, anyway, South American countries, let's say. So we're a melting pot, right? He made it about Puerto Rican culture and about how it is here. He had taco stands, actual taco stands from Puerto Rican neighborhoods. He had, all kinds of references. He had the sugar canes dancing in his videos, which is colonialism, where the brown and black people who were both in Puerto Rico and still are, were, made to, cut the sugar canes, I guess, and things like that. I'm probably mangling some details of the history here because I'm so kind of crazy. Then this person said he made a bigger divide, making it about culture, not America. He could have pulled more support by making it about all cultures coming to America, Germans, Italians, and etc. White people. But anyway, my answer was Lady Gaga was there. She's an Italian American. He had many cultures in the lineup. She sang in English. Maybe that, I said, but she sang a song she wrote with Bruno Mars, who is another Latinx person, or whatever you want to call them, in salsa style. Talk about blending. And Gaga also has mixed French, English, German, and Scottish ancestry on her mother's side. So there's all the European cultures pretty much taken care of in one person. And she's a big supporter of LGBTQ people who were also well represented in his performance. Ricky Martin is a Puerto Rican singer, actor, and author. Yes, he's from Puerto Rico. He is very close to Bad Bunny, to Benito. But he is of Hispanic, Corsican, Spanish, Catalan, Basque, and Canarian descent. When he hit it big time, living La Vida Loca, if you remember, he had to sing in English to cross over to popularity. Benito has done so by singing in his native tongue. He only sings in his native tongue. He was the first Grammy winner album for Best Album in Spanish. It's huge. And the joy on, the joy on Ricky Martin's face when he sang in Spanish was something to behold, to my mind. And apparently those two are very close. Pedro Pascal was there. He was born in Chile, and he identifies as Chilean American, often described as a Chilean, Texan, California, New Yorker. Cardi B is a New Yorker. She was there of Caribbean heritage. Jessica Alba was there. She's of mixed heritage. She has a strong Mexican-American background on her father's side and diverse European ancestry from her mother's side. Her father is of Mexican, indigenous Mexican, and Spanish descent, while her mother, Catherine Jensen, has Danish, Irish, Scottish, Welsh, English, and French ancestry. And there were others, you can probably look them up. There was all kinds of culture. His dancers reflected the mixed heritage and culture in Puerto Rico, thanks to colonization, right? And then he did the power poles because the Puerto Rico is the worst power grid in the world because colonizers have not helped to fix the power grid after hurricanes or supported Puerto Rico, who, by the way, are Americans, but they don't even get to vote. So, I'm sorry if you listen to this person, but basically, this is what I'm hearing. But this is what I'm hearing, not just from MAGA. This is what I'm hearing from white people who are Democrats, left, whatever you want to call it. Oh, it would have been nice if at least one song would be in English. Well, he writes and sings in Spanish. So why should he? That's what's made him big. He was representing who he is, right? And I loved it, loved every minute of it. And what does this have to do with the astrology? Well, Venus square Uranus, while Venus is not even back online until this big eclipse on February the 17th, she is, Venus is everything that is othered to my mind. Everybody always thinks of it as just women, and it is that because women have been othered by white male patriarchy, whatever you can call it. Brown people have, black people have, all these immigrants have, waves on waves of immigrants going back to this book have hated on the next wave of immigrants, and as they started to assimilate. And this country is just founded by, and the current, what's going on now is trying to grasp onto this white slave owner colonial power. They are trying to cling on with their fingernails. And in one halftime show, 13 minutes, Bad Bunny managed to put together so much of that history and culture. And by the way, Sinners movie as well kind of does that as well with vampirism, about waves of immigrants, if you haven't watched it. I'm still unpacking a lot of those Easter eggs because, as I said, I'm a white person, whiter than white. I'm actually British born, dual nationality. I love the USA. But what's happening here is revealing how indoctrinated people are here. And by the way, that whole thing about picking up the phone and having broken English, well, that's a whole thing about capitalism too, because half the time those call centers are not even in this country anyway. So anyway, that's my rant for the day. I love you. Wake up. I'm going to actually start going to, everybody knows I love my boxing. I might even integrate my short boxing video into this if I can figure out how, or I'll upload it onto YouTube again so you can go and watch me boxing. They have a Spanish class because we have a lot of brown-skinned people come to boxing. And even though it's an evening class, and I don't usually do evenings for things like that, I'm going to go because I figured I might learn some Spanish, and maybe I'm going to download Duolingo and add that to my pile of things that I'm always studying, because I think, it's time we woke up and realized that the USA is not a white Christian country. Never was, even as much as the founding fathers tried to make it as such in the Constitution. And yes, they did. Go listen to Tad Sturmer. I know you'll all be upset. You're going, who's she? She should go back to her own country. By the way, I've been told to go back to my own country before too. So if you say it, you'll be off my YouTube in a shot. Rant over. Peace out. I love you all. That's some Venus-Uranus square for you, because Venus is sitting on my progressed sun, and so is this eclipse. Bye.